Welcome to Getting Sketchy Live, brought to you by thevirtualinstructor.com. And now, let's get sketchy.
Hello there, everyone. Matt here with thevirtualinstructor.com, and welcome to Gettin Sketchy Live, the greatest live broadcast in all of YouTube. And that's why it's so great, because we mess up all the time.
It's live.
Yeah. Anyway, it's great to see all you guys here tonight. Last week we had to reschedule because we had a snowstorm here in North Carolina. It was a weird one, but it created some icy conditions, and for the safety of Ashley, we decided to move it to this week. So if you're joining us tonight, I'm glad that you are. It's a completely different day here in North Carolina. It was 70 degrees at least today, beautiful, sun shining, giving us a taste of spring, and I hope it's beautiful wherever you are. If you like the cold weather and it's cold where you are, well, I hope you enjoy it. Anyway, tonight is our season finale for season 13, and what we do in this episode is we look at the drawings that we created in paintings. We did a painting this season.
That's right.
And we're going to look at them, and we're going to critique them. Now, you might think, oh, I really like the shows where they draw. Well, we like those shows too, but critique is an important part of developing as an artist. And the great thing is, you don't have to have your own artworks critiqued in order to benefit from a critique. So we're going to be looking at our drawings. We're going to be doing a really quick, down and dirty critique of each drawing. So it's going to be very quick. It's not going to be too in-depth, but I am sure you're going to pick up some things dealing with composition, use of materials, contrast and value, so on. All those things that are important for you to develop as an artist. So even though we're not critiquing your artworks tonight, we're critiquing our own, you're still going to pick up some valuable information from this. Now, this is the last episode of season 13, and like we always do, we'll take a few weeks off, and then we'll come back with season 14, because you guys love getting sketchy as much as we love putting this broadcast together for you. So Ashley's sitting right over there. How are you doing this evening, Ashley?
I'm doing well, Matt. Thank you for asking, and thank you guys for your patience since we weren't able to broadcast last week. And it was my fault. I just wanted to stay home, make sure I was safe, and I was safe because I'm here today. And you're here today. So let's take a look at some artwork, talk about it, what went well, what went less well, and then we're going to pick our favorites, and you can pick your favorite and tell us what it is in the chat also.
Yes, that's another thing that I forgot to point out, that we're going to pick our favorites, and you can pick your favorites as well. So anyway, let's see. A couple of things. First of all, if you are watching this live on YouTube, you can post your comments and questions too. You can tell us which one is your favorite as well. If you do have a comment or question that's directed specifically at Ashley or I, we actually use the super chat function that will help the channel out, of course, and it will make your comment or question pretty prominent in the chat box there, and we'll do a little cheer for you too. Although, I got the cheer on the, I think I can bring up the cheer. We'll see. Maybe we'll do the cheer. Anyway, also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I can't remember the facts I came up with a while back, but there is a small percentage of you that are actually subscribers to the YouTube channel that watch a lot of the content that we produce. It would be great if you subscribe to the channel at the moment, right this second. Have 991,000 subscribers.
I was checking that out. It has ticked up.
It's ticked up a little bit, but we're just 9,000 short of 1 million. And although I am not really into those vanity stats, it would be nice to have 1 million subscribers, of course. Anyway, I'm getting ready to sneeze. The weather is great. Boy, what you just witnessed was me trying to hold in a sneeze, and that doesn't work.
We got to roll that back and pause it. Look at some of
watch it
facial expression.
Yeah,
sure that.
Anyway, hope that didn't gross anybody out. Anyway, the weather is changing. It's getting more spring-like, and obviously my nose is reacting to that. One more thing I need to tell you about, and that's, of course, the membership program at thevirtualinstructor.com. There you will find a ton of drawing and painting courses on a variety of subject matter and media, weekly critiques as part of the Members Minute, and we do weekly live lessons as well. In fact, after this broadcast, Ash is going to be finishing up our current series where he's creating a landscape with oil paints. Membership is very, very inexpensive, and there is a ton of content. I don't know how long it would take you to get through all the content, but it would be well over probably 2 years, I would say at the very minimum. The membership program has been around since 2010, and weekly content has been added to it, so there is a ton of content over there. There's also a year-long curriculum for visual arts teachers that includes everything you need to teach in your classroom. If you want to check out the membership program, of course, there was a QR code on your screen. I was supposed to tell you about that. But there's also a link in the description below. If you click on that link, it will take you to the membership program page, and you can learn more about it. I would strongly suggest checking it out. Everyone starts out with a week-long trial, and then beyond that week-long trial, we offer everybody a 30-day money-back guarantee. We want to make sure everybody who's in the program wants to be there and is loving it. I think, is that it?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think everything has been said.
I think we're ready. I think we're ready for the critique show.
Work. Yeah, let's do it.
And we'll go ahead and switch over. All right. Well, I got the camera set up, and then I forgot this big old screen that's going to be in my face here. I'll try to move it over just a little bit. There you go.
There we go. Now we can
see me peeking through here. Anyway, this is the first artwork that we did this season, and we worked in a variety of different media this season. But I started things out with a drawing of a horseback rider on white drawing paper with a graphite pencil. So I'm going to go ahead and start talking about this piece, and then Ashley can chime in after that.
We did get a super chat from Jan.
We do have a super chat.
Test out that.
I think we can do it. Let's give Jan the super chat cheer.
Yeah.
All right, and Jan says, "Thank you for another great season, Matt and Ashley. Already looking forward to the next one. We are fortunate who can learn and be entertained by such excellent artists." Well, thank you so much. And I really appreciate the entertaining comment, because I'm still trying to imagine in my mind what my sneeze looked like. But we're going to move on from that. Anyway, back to the drawing here. I really wanted to, the focus of this sketch really was to make sure that I got the proportions right and then the relationships of the values right, but I also wanted to incorporate a sense of movement in the piece. And the way I did that, one way that you can create movement in any drawing or painting you create is by setting up some type of diagonal. Whenever you have diagonals in the composition, you're going to create a stronger composition, but not only that, you are going to create a feeling of movement. And I also added these little wispy lines at the very end to create additional movement. I'm not sure how much they work, but I do think they add a little bit more of a dynamic feeling to the piece. Now, I think I've got a full range of value in this piece, meaning that I've got the darkest darks and the lightest lights, which is something that you really want to create or strive to have in your own drawings and paintings. But the light source is not super evident. The light source is coming from the upper left-hand corner up here, because we've got light up here and shadow right here. And we can see it a little bit in some highlighted areas, but not so much on the body of the horse. So if I was to spend more time with this or work on this a little bit more, I would probably darken up some of the values on the right side of the body of the horse. We do have a little bit of a cast shadow right here, but I still need to make those shadows a little bit stronger. I think the shadows and dark values on the rider are a little bit more developed than the values on the horse. So that's one thing that I definitely would improve. And also, I would like to have added a little bit more clarity of where the edges of the horse are. Where the edges of the horse are. It's R, right?
The edges are. Yes.
Where the edges are of the horse and the edges of the man riding the horse. It gets a little lost. It gets a little lost in some of these areas, especially right here. But again, this is a quick sketch. If I had more time and I worked a little bit slower, of course, I would address all those issues and make a little bit more contrast there. One thing that I could have done to do that, and I already alluded at that, is to create more contrast. Now, I've got some dark values in here and some light values, but it probably wouldn't hurt to go in and put some more edges in there, some stronger edges. And I really would want the head of the horse to feel like it protrudes out a little bit more. And by creating a stronger edge between the edge of the horse and the edge of the man, I think that would make this a little bit stronger. So that's my quick down and dirty critique of that piece. What do you have to say there, Ashley?
Well, I like everything that you said and agree with that, so I don't have a lot to add, but you started talking about the diagonal of the horse and what that would do. What it does, psychologically, it tells us that the horse is falling over or the horse is in motion. And we go ahead and accept that it must be in motion and it's not tipped or falling over. So it's the same thing whether you're working with an animal like a horse or a person running or jogging or in some other sort of an action pose. It's just drawing them in a way from a position that it looks like if they froze, they would lose their balance and fall. That's going to guarantee that it's going to be interpreted as motion. I think the lines work. You know, the dynamic lines coming off of the right side of the horse and the runner are like tracers. They kind of tell us where the horse and the man used to be. So that's a definite tool that a lot of artists, particularly comic book artists, use to great effect to show movement. And the longer those lines are, the faster it feels like your in this case your horse is moving. The background works pretty well as being blank because you've got some shadows down there that let us know that there is an environment. We just don't see it. That's right. Just a little bit of shadows down there ground the horse, and it doesn't feel like it's a sketch floating on a blank page, even without any background having been developed. If I were going to work on this one, or if you had more time to work on it, I would like to have seen just a really subtle, super light gradation from the very top that fades away, either a third of the way down or 2/3 of the way down. And it's not a developed background, but it would just break that large space up a little bit and make us give us the impression that there's kind of a sky transition into a bleached out, white ground plane.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion right there.
That would be the only thing I would do different, other than the things that you said, and that is in the mid, in the top of your drawing, you've got some strong darks, and in the bottom of the drawing, you've got strong darks. But right through the middle of the horse, there's just a little bit less contrast, and some of the shapes of the man and the horse just kind of blend together.
They just merge
in there.
They become one.
Yeah, they're
I wonder with the lines. I wonder if the lines should be coming
downward,
more like this.
Oh, I see that in perspective.
Yeah,
according to our own eye level. Yeah, I like that.
I kind of like that too. Yeah, yeah, that feels more like they're moving towards us instead of in a downward motion.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that does it for that one. Let's go ahead and switch over to the next one here, and that was Ashley's drawing.
Oh yes. The portrait of an old man. I don't know how old he is, but he's got some wrinkles in there. And I was glad in this drawing to get far enough into the drawing in 45 minutes so we could work on some of those wrinkles. So I was really happy with this one. It was the first drawing I did of the season. And, Matt did such a challenging drawing with the horse and rider to start with. I thought I would try to challenge myself too and start with a portrait. It wasn't crazy big, which can be dangerous in portraiture because it can make our small discrepancies in proportion seem larger. And I was lucky to have Matt here because after 6 or 7 minutes of drawing, he had noticed that the space between the tip of the nose and the cheek on our left was a little bit large. And so I was able to make that correction pretty fast and then kind of set myself up for success, having a pretty decent profile in place to lay those or the remainder of those features in. So this one was a little bit of a team effort. There was a lot of detail in here that we just kind of hinted at, like the zipper on the jacket, it's just left a line bare, like a white empty space, and then threw some tick marks in there. So it wasn't carefully modeled, but it works with all of the mark making in the rest of the artwork. It does have a feeling that it was drawn fast, which is in this case accurate. We don't have to pretend or try to make our marks look fresh. In 45 minutes, they're going to look pretty fresh. This portrait was not hard in some ways because of the turn of the face. We're looking at a 3/4 pose, and that keeps us from having to deal with the problem of symmetry. In portraiture, if you're going to draw a portrait of a person looking directly at, you, the viewer or the artist, then it's good if they have a symmetric face, or any discrepancies in their symmetry might look like drawing problems. So I'm a big believer in 3/4 portraiture. And then it's a little harder to tell because of the man's wrinkles and his age, I guess. There's some light areas and some dark areas because of the wrinkles in both where the light's hitting and in the shadow. But if you look carefully, you can kind of follow the shadow line as it kind of passes around his the eye on our right, down his cheekbone, and then kind of close to his mustache. So it's pretty distinct corner of the face here, where everything on one side of that is darker than everything on the other side of that corner, the corner of the face. So if you're working on and practicing portraiture, light from one side, that I don't know if you can see me in the little tiny box, but that kind of captures the corner of the face in terms of where the light meets the shadow. Set that up. Move your subject around or move your lighting around until you're describing that form of your subject's face with their shadow, and it'll make your job a lot easier in creating that likeness.
All right. I think that this is a great drawing to use as an example for creating a full range of value. If this is a very, the marks are very expressive and very deliberate. And somebody even made the comment that it looks like a sketch by Van Gogh. And that it kind of has that feeling because all the marks feel almost like deliberate brush strokes.
Right. They're distinct, and there wasn't any smudging or anything like that in here.
But if you look at it and squint your eyes, then you can really see those value relationships, and you can really see the illusion of form that's happening there on the face. But with that being said, when you look at it without squinted eyes, you can see all of the marks that were made and really enjoy the mark making, because there's some really great areas in this piece. I really like right here underneath the nose where we've got the shadow, but this feels like hair. And I really want people to notice this area right here, because when we draw hair, a lot of times the tendency is to draw spaghetti, and that's not really how hair is best communicated in a drawing or painting. We need to think about hair as a form. And Ashley's done a great job with that mustache right there, creating the form of the mustache. And up here on the eyebrow too. I mean, these marks are, and I have the benefit of looking at this really up close, but the marks are really nice with such a variety of different grays and then these really dark darks in there. It makes this drawing feel alive. So this is an example of a subject that, it's, I don't want to call this guy boring, but it's just a person's face. But the mark making in here has made this drawing really exciting. And you talked about the nose earlier. I really like this edge of the nose,
That little accent in there,
right? The way it turns out and it has the little bump, and then the protrusion right there. And I exaggerated a little bit, but that adds more character to it. It makes it feel more like an actual human being.
Yeah, it's something that Norman Rockwell was so good at. He just slightly exaggerated people's distinctive features. They almost felt a little bit cartoonish, but in a strangely accurate way. So,
and the eyes are also really well done, especially this one right here. It's in shadow compared to the one over here, and just the variety of different values in that section. We might think, oh, it's the white of the eye, we need to make that whole area white, but it's really not. There's lots of different grays in there, and those highlights
I like to call
really
them
nice.
The grays of the eye, because we call them the whites of the eye, and I can't tell you how many drawings I see that are fantastic that my students do, and the eyes look like they're raised 2 inches off the page. I mean, they are just jumping off the page because we've programmed ourselves to believe that they're white, and they're only white where the light hits directly.
All right, moving on to the next drawing. That was mine, and I decided to go with pastels for the next one. And this is obviously a pastel landscape. And it's not a very big drawing, but I wanted to really focus on putting in big shapes of color and value and just kind of create the impression of this landscape. So I think I worked on pastel matte paper for this with Rembrandt pastels. And I really like the feeling of this, especially because it reminds me of the day that we've had here today, minus the fact that none of the trees have leaves on them. But this piece has some movement in it as well, and that's created. These are big marks here. That's created by the brush strokes, and they're not really brush strokes, but they're strokes that I made with the pastel, and I really like that. I really would like to see it echoed somewhere else in the drawing. So we've got these swoopy marks coming down, but they're not really found anywhere else. I think if I could somehow incorporate that in the background a little bit, create some type of repetition that echoes that, and maybe in the foreground too, I could really make this piece a little bit more dynamic.
Yeah, that tree's got a really sort of heavy, drippy feel to it, you know, the way those strokes come downward at an angle.
Yeah.
I like that.
I do like the range of value in this piece. I've got some of these darks in here by using black first, and then I went over the black with some other colors. I even used black in some of these areas that are really dark in the background and in the shadowed areas. And by placing a darker green over the top of it, it doesn't appear as a flat black. It feels more natural. Whenever you're using a colored medium, like pastels or colored pencils, sometimes you want to stay away from black, or you want to use black and then use a color on top of it. So you give a little bit of a hue to the black. Black by itself can make color images look flat and unnatural. And you can see that a little bit starting to happen up here. But for the most part, I covered over those black areas, and I really like the way that that looks in the piece. I do feel like there's a nice illusion of light within the scene. The light is coming from almost directly above, maybe this direction. So we've got all these shadows underneath the trees in the background. But it would be nice to see some darker values on some of the bodies of the trees that are further back in the distance. A little bit more like the range of value that I have here in the foreground and the middle ground. Of course, I would like to add a little bit more detail to some of the elements in the foreground, like the flowers and things. And some of these whites are a little too white. Just like with black, we need to add a little bit of a hue to them. But since we were working quickly, and honestly, I don't think these whites are actually white. I think they're a very light yellow, but they're reading as a white in the image. So I would prefer to have them have a little bit more color associated with them. Obviously, with more time, I can put more detail in the foreground, and that is really taken away from the illusion of space in the image. If this area right here was a little bit more detailed, had just a little bit more refinement, it would make it look like there was a little bit more of the illusion of space. I do like the diagonal that's happening through there. I think that looks pretty dynamic. But I would like to have brought the trees up a little bit higher and had another diagonal go down in that direction. It's kind of flat across there, and I think it would be more interesting to have a little bit of a higher diagonal happening there. So.
Maybe even the same thing with the flowers at the bottom, that they could rise slightly towards the left and create a zigzag.
Right, like this?
Yeah, a little bit like that. And then the same thing with those trees.
Yeah.
If you were going to modify the reference.
And that would also bring a lot of focus to the tree here, which is really the focal point anyway. So, the sky's not very interesting. There's a couple of clouds up there. It probably would be better to have the cloud extend out a little bit further away from the edge of the tree, but it's not bad. I do like the gradation that I was able to create in the sky. It makes it look a little bit more realistic. And that's something for you to keep in mind. If you're doing like a blue sky, typically the values are darker at the top of the sky and they get lighter as they get closer to the horizon line. They also typically get warmer too. It might be strange to talk about blue being warm, but there are different types of blues, and some blues are a little bit warmer than others. All right, I'm going to leave it on to you now.
This is like a spring scene and everything's in bloom and super green. But I like how Matt used yellow in here a lot. I like to think of yellow as light green. Sometimes it's like green being hit by the light. So Matt used a lot of yellow, but he also used another color in the background of the field where the tree line starts, and even in the trees, it's kind of an orangish color, or orangish brown. And I think that contributes to the feeling of representationalism. We see an eye, and we know that the eye has the white part of the eye, and we just make it white, right? And you see a field and a bunch of trees, and you just make them green. But there's always more going on. There's always a little bit of nuance that keeps our representational art from feeling too simple and too cartoonish. And so just like we want to make the whites of the eyes a little bit gray or have some shadows on there, Matt bringing in some warmer or actually it's colors more from the other side of the color wheel.
Yeah, it's burnt sienna.
It just increases that range of contrast in a different way than value does.
Yeah, and burnt sienna is a wonderful color to add to sections of green in a landscape. Even if you don't necessarily see it in your reference, just little pops of it here and there just contrast against the green and make it look more natural. It doesn't feel like it doesn't seem in our minds like it would make it feel more natural, but it does. So a little bit of contrasting colors can go a long way. All right, you ready to move on to the next one?
Let's keep going.
All right, and I hope you guys, as you're watching this, are thinking about your favorites. I'm going to pick my favorite that I created. I'm going to pick one that Ashley created as my favorite. He's going to do the same, and we hope that you do the same as well. And at the end, we'll ask you what you think. All right, let's move on to the next one, and that was yours.
All right, this was alcohol-based markers, and it's a spilled glass of some sort of thick-looking liquid. I think it looks like mercury to me because its edge is so thick, so viscous. This one does have it has a really wide range of value. I used all the markers in my set of 5, preserved a little bit of white in there, and got all the way to black. So I'm happy with that. I like the placement of the glass and where it is. That works for me. I really picked the subject because it was shiny more than for compositional purposes, but it is off center a little bit, and then the liquid spills off to the other quadrant. So we got our glass in the top right and our liquid kind of in the bottom left, and they just kind of echo back and forth against one another. So my eye does move around the composition well enough, but I've got some problems with the drawing. So my ellipses don't really match, particularly the back of the glass and then the front ellipse of the glass. I mean, if you follow that rear circle right, it's like an egg, and the other one's a little bit more like a circle, probably too circular. So I think both of those missed the mark a little bit. I really wish I would have taken, I mean, ellipses do take some time. You know, you draw them and then you refine them a little bit, and then you refine them some more, and eventually you just kind of have to go with it. And probably I was worried about the time and shouldn't have been. I would have rather have less contrast in my artwork and not have those drawing problems in there. I think it would have been happier. So maybe I, for this one, I think got away from me a little bit. And I assume, I haven't gone back and watched the video. I'm not sure if the mistake in that ellipse happened in the pencil step, you know, the initial drawing of the contours, or if it got away from me when we started applying the markers. But one of the two, there's a little bit of a disconnect there between the opening of the glass and the bottom of the glass that I just can't get past. So that's what I would have probably done different, is moved slower in the first step, even if I didn't get as far into the second step, the shading.
All right. Well, some of the things I have to say about this piece is, first of all, I really like the line where it is, where we've got contrast between lighter values and darker values. Mm-hmm. And I also like the gradation up here at the top, and then the gradation that goes out this direction as well. I think that all of those value changes make a big, they make an impact on the viewer. Another thing is the distortion that happens in the glass. You know, when you're drawing transparent objects, especially glass, there's going to be some distortion. So you can see this edge continues all the way through, but we can see how it's distorted within the glass. And if you look at glass and you look closely, you'll notice that. And that is a key factor in creating the illusion of glass in your drawings. I also like the addition of the cross contour lines that go across the body of the glass. That helps to hide the ellipse issue back here. And the range of value is really exceptional in this piece as well. You mentioned that already, but this is one of those pieces that it's really cool if you back away from it. So let's back away from it for a minute and look at it. Backed away.
Good gracious.
We went too far.
There we go.
But you can see how realistic that looks when we back away from it.
I like the glass aspect and the shininess. Those parts, that's what attracted me to the picture anyway. So
yeah,
I'm at least glad that part is working in here.
Yeah, well, it's all a testament to the range of value and the placement of the values, of course. Yeah, there's some distortion issues there and with the ellipses, but it's not a big deal, especially since this is a sketch. The one thing that seems odd about this image, and it's not any fault of yours, it's the reference image itself. You know, you said it was a thick fluid.
Yeah.
And then it's got these sharp edges. So it being flat across here makes it feel less fluid-like. But
Yeah, it is so. It's almost like it feels like it poured out in a 90-degree angle.
right. It's strange the way it is. But like I said, when you back up, you read it as a fluid, and you don't really notice its the odd shape. But when you get larger, or you get closer to it, it feels like, what is that?
It feels like home plate.
Right. It looks like home plate. Yeah. And again, this is an example of a lot of times we work from references, and the references have visual information in it that when we create a drawing or painting from it, just doesn't translate like it does in the reference. And that it's only that hard edge. And I wonder if this was a little bit just rounded off, just a little
made
bit.
It a little more irregular.
Yeah.
And it's something I just failed to notice while we were working on it, because Matt and I talk about how references are there to help us, but they're not always our target or our goal. And then I became locked in and just drew that shape exactly the way I saw it. And it is very geometric.
It is. It's
for flowing liquid.
It's something I didn't notice until just now, when we were looking at it. So, all right.
That's why we do critiques, right? We look back, sometimes see our artwork with a little distance between when we made it and when we critique it. That can really help.
Yeah. And it looks like some people in the comments are saying that too. Maybe I don't know if they're with us or if they're a little bit behind us or not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next one, because we should be halfway through them now, and I don't think we are.
Okay,
we're almost halfway through them. All right, the next one was my drawing, and I decided to stay with the allergens. So I used pastel the 2 weeks before, and so I decided I'll use charcoal. And now I really love charcoal because it is a drawing medium that behaves like a painting medium. And for those of you who are scared of charcoal because it's messy, or you think that it's going to be difficult to work with, don't fear charcoal. It is a wonderful medium to work with. In fact, charcoal and oil paint, Ashley and I have discussed this, we think that those are the most forgiving mediums out there. So you're free to make mistakes. You're free to change things very quickly. And the great thing about charcoal is you get such a broad range of value so incredibly quickly. So for this piece, I worked on a white sheet of drawing paper and put down some information very quickly with a stick of vine charcoal, and then did some blending and smudging and erasing until the lion emerged from the surface. I really like this one. I also used some compressed charcoal at the end to make some of the darks a little bit darker. I like the way the face is arranged here, the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, and there's a curvature that happens there. And I think I did a pretty good job getting those curvatures in the right location. I like the eyes, the way I handled the eyes, and also the mane back here. Some of these marks that I made in this location, mainly with the eraser to remove some of the furriness, they're a little sharp and a little hard-edged. I would like to for them to be a little bit softer, more like the fur back here around the edges of the face.
I really like the fur in the top left corner. Yeah. There's like little flecks and pieces that don't even really connect to the rest of the lion. It's like they're just reaching out and grabbing a little bit of light, but we don't see it as being as distinct, and that makes it feel super soft.
Yeah, but as far as the range of value, I think I've got a full range of value. I like the composition. I like everything about this piece, really except for the strong little strands of hair. And I think I did that at the end of the process with the electric eraser. Mm-hmm. If I were to do this over, I would make this area a little bit softer, a little bit less raggedy, more like what's happening back here in the background. And that would be relatively easy to do. I do feel like some of these highlights need to be there, but some of them are a little bit strong. Same thing for the whiskers right here. I've got marks that I made for the whiskers with the compressed charcoal, and they're noticeably more skinny than the marks that I made for the white whiskers, which are pretty strong. So I would like to have cleaned that up a little bit. And of course, with more time, you can refine any drawing that you work on. But this was a quick sketch. I really enjoyed the process. It's one of my favorites for sure. I'm not going to reveal which one my favorite is, but I really enjoyed doing this one. And composition-wise, when you're talking about composition and you have a portrait, whether it's a person or an animal, the eyes in this particular case are in the upper third. So if we were to divide this into thirds, we can see that the eyes kind of line up in the upper third line. And that is always a good place to put a focal point. So if you're trying to determine where you should put a focal point when you're doing a portrait, if you place the eyes on the upper third, that's a good location to place it, as opposed to putting them right in the center. So if the eyes in this case were down a little bit further, closer to the middle of the picture plane, the image would feel very heavy at the bottom of the picture plane. In fact, it would feel visually heavy across the board. So by having this a little bit higher, I think that made the composition a little bit stronger. All right, Ashley, do you have anything?
I'll just add that the 3/4 view works as well with animals as it does with people. And Matt did a great job in describing the form of the lion's face. We can see some of the front of the face and some of the sides. So it was a good choice for the compositionally to draw a lion that had his face turned just a little bit. There's a lot of subtle value changes right up there around the eye and between the eyes, and it feels like it's tight muscles in the face. So he's got a nice strong stare, an intensity around the eyes that pulls me in because of those quick changes in value up there. So I think this is a really solid piece, Matt. And, you mentioned not being completely satisfied with the sharpness of some of those last marks that went in with the electric eraser, but you could probably just finger tap that down in about 10 seconds.
Oh, yeah, it's easily fixed.
Right, super easy there.
But we're critiquing this as it is, as it was completed.
Get it out.
Yeah.
Get it out. That's what we should do. For the last episode, we should do some touch-ups to one piece and see if we can, after our critique.
Hey, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
We'll table that and talk about it for next season. That might be fun to revisit a piece.
All right. The next piece is yours, and it was the scissors.
All right. So I chose the scissors because, again, it's a shiny object, and I like drawing shiny things. My favorite color is red, and they had red handles, and they were in my classroom. I thought, I'm going to draw those scissors. And then I thought about a way, trompe-l'oeil painting, where you kind of draw the subject like it's coming out of the picture plane instead of going into the picture plane. And I thought that might be fun since there's not a whole lot going on. There's not a background here. The object is drawn from a flat angle. It's not foreshortened in any way. So it's drawn in as an ordinary way as it could be. And then I tried to make it a little bit more extraordinary or interesting by having the background not make it to the edges of the picture plane. And that helps with the scissors feel like they're on top. They're overlapping what appear to be the edges of the picture plane. And overlapping is a way to create space. And then in this case, in a subject that really doesn't have much space. Also, I thought, I want to be able to focus on the rendering and the shine, and I should be able to draw these scissors really fast because there's not a lot there. And this one was hard. I got to tell you, I was surprised at how challenging it was for me, just because all of the contours are so subtle, and I was into them. I wanted to get the curves of the handles just right. So I felt like it was it was a little bit more intense to complete in the 45 minutes than I thought it would be, or maybe even than it looks, just because the shapes of the scissors are so particular. But overall, when I look back at it, I'm pretty happy with it. Somehow the illusion is overdone on one of those scissor blades, and it actually feels almost like it wouldn't be parallel to the other, like it is really raised up off the page more so than the scissor blade that is behind, the more vertical one.
Yeah,
So-
and I know why.
Okay, what do you think it is?
There's a couple of factors that are working it here. Do you have anything else to say about this before?
No, I mean, no, I don't think so. I like the mark making in there, and there's some little bits of yellow in the blade.
Yes.
That I do like
Yes.
because it created a nice color scheme, a primary color scheme, really rounded it out the colors. So
Yeah.
I liked it. I like all of those aspects. It just feels like one of those blades is tilted compared or askew to the other.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I really like this piece. I like the trompe-l'oeil type of imagery.
It's fun.
And I like the way you use the border and that the scissors are going outside of the border. I like the color scheme that you used. This is a great example of having a section that's pretty much a neutral color that you've added color to it so it's no longer neutral and it's more interesting. There's even a bit of blue in the blade here. There's a bit of red and a bit of yellow. And some of that might have just been picked up by the pastels. These are oil pastels.
Incidental mark making.
Yeah, and they're sticky, so they pick up color, and they kind of all mix and blend together in areas and make your oil pastel paintings more interesting and not always on purpose. And they just happen that way. I love oil pastels. I think oil pastels are a fantastic medium for not only drawing and painting as an artist, but also for teaching art. Oil pastels should be in every art classroom from elementary to high school because you can teach so much with oil pastel. Color mixing, layering colors. You can teach painting, but not use paint. It's such a wonderful medium to work with. Anyway, I like the contrast that you've created in areas with the wonderful values. Again, if we were going to take the color out of this, there'd be a full range of value. We'd have the values in the right locations. Light source looks like it's coming from the upper right-hand corner with these highlights and shadows. And then, of course, we have the cast shadows that happen underneath the blade as well, or underneath the scissors as well. And can anybody figure out why one blade feels askew?
I've got it. I've got a cast shadow in the border around the red handles, but not under the tip of that blade.
It's missing.
Yep, the cast shadow's missing. And
it's missing there. You know, it's also missing here too, but that's not the only reason. That's one of the reasons.
The cast shadow would have given us enough information to know how close it's supposed to be to the paper.
Yes, there's cast shadow here, but none here and none here.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So a little bit of cast shadow right here would make that feel a little bit more flat. But there's another thing, and that is the fact that this blade is picking up so much light. And this one, we're seeing that light along the edge, but then we've got an angle right here where this shape of value right here is pretty dark compared to the value next to it.
It's just similar to the blue in the background.
Another thing is the shadow here is so much darker than the shadow here. So, and it's got that dark edge right there, making it stand out a little bit more. So I think all of those factors are contributing to that blade feeling a little bit different.
Even more raised. More raised than intended.
Yeah, it almost feels like it's doing this.
Right, like it's curving up a little bit.
Right. Yeah, but it's it's kind of a cool effect, you know. And it's probably something most people aren't going to notice. We notice it, but I'm not sure everybody's going to look at that and say, well, that feels like it's bending up at a weird angle. But that's why. It's because of the values. And that gives you an idea of how powerful value is. It can really tell us a lot about what we're looking at. So that's why value is the most important element of art, I guess. All right.
It's the element of elements.
The element of elements. All right, so let's move on to the next one here. And that would be the Red Bull can. Right. So we went from one primary scheme to another primary scheme. And in my infinite wisdom, I decided to use markers and colored pencils, which, colored pencils are not the best medium for a Gettin Sketchy episode. I have discovered that, and that's because colored pencils are a very tedious medium to work with. But when you work with markers and colored pencils, it gives you a little bit more of a chance here. Some things I like about this piece, I like the angle of the image. I like the perspective that's happening here. It really does create the illusion of space. It makes you feel like you're up close and personal, but you're also looking down on the Red Bull can. I also like the precision that I was able to get with the text and the logos and other pieces of the can here in a short period of time. I also like the way that I was able to create the impression of text without actually writing things out. So if you look real close, you'll notice that it's not actually text. It's just really scribbles in the locations where there might be some text. I also like this little section up here too, where we've got the 8.4 fluid ounces or whatever with the highlight over the top. Now, with all that being said, the things that I don't like about this is how dark I got down here in some of these areas, especially under the shadows. Some of these areas are actually reading as black, and that's taking away from the colorfulness of the image. I would have preferred to use a darker value. And I think I did use a darker value, but it's reading as black. And I'm not sure if it's the way it was photographed or whatever, but there's a couple areas like that where the values just got a little bit too dark, and that takes away from the realism there. This area up here has got a variety of different values and shapes of values and a little bit of color to that value as well, but it's lacking some of the details that would make it really feel crisp and defined. And also the blues, you know, I was stuck with the blues that I had with my marker, and the blue that I needed is not actually the blue that I had. So the blue markers I had to work with were not a great match for the blues that we see on the Red Bull. So it kind of looks a little bit more like a sugar-free Red Bull. And I mentioned this to Ashley before we went live, which has the lighter blue. This area up here is okay. And you got to have that contrast in order to make it look like it's a reflective metal object. But the blues, I think, are a little bit too light. I would have liked to make them a little bit darker. I also don't really like the... I used a gel pen for these, I think.
I was wondering, I couldn't remember what the white...
I think I used a gel pen. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I used a gel pen. I always wanted to use a gel pen and like give it a chance. And every time I use it, I'm like, man, I should have used gouache instead.
Yeah, but the gel pen probably was better for the time constraint.
Right, for the time constraints and just putting down those marks pretty quickly. They worked okay, but I would have preferred to have a little bit more precision with a brush. And I know that might seem weird to some of you for me to say that I feel like I have more precision with a brush than I do with a pen, but the gel pen makes a pretty wide mark. And it's not a consistent mark either. It sometimes it gets a little globby. And I know people love the gel pens, and I try to use them, and I try to give them a chance, like I said, but I always come up a little bit disappointed with how they behave. So the gel pen areas, I think, make it look a little bit more cartoony and a little bit more like a drawing. And I would have preferred to not do that. So I really wish I would have used gouache instead of the gel pen. Also, using gouache allows you to mix a little bit of color in so that you're not dealing with white. And it's going to look more natural if you do that. Same thing with black, you know, when we talked about black earlier. So if we mix in a little bit of color, it's going to be more of a natural looking highlight. And in this case, the white areas are really popping out and commanding too much attention, especially on those bulls and the logo. Anyway, that's all. Oh, and the shadow. I don't really like the shadow shape right there. I feel like that needs to be maybe even a little bit different. The shadow shape might need to be a little bit more like this instead of this little area right here. I think that was hastily done there, and I don't really like it.
Yeah, I think you threw that in right at the end.
Yeah, I think I did, and I think that it actually detracts from the image. Again, I think the shadow shape needs to probably be a little bit more like something like this or something. Just not a real big fan of that shadow shape. It's subtle down there, thankfully, but this wasn't my favorite drawing of the season, to be honest with you. I thought it was going to be something that I really enjoyed. And honestly, I do enjoy drawing this kind of stuff. But with the time constraint, this was kind of a large drawing to use markers and colored pencils. It's obvious I hurried through sections and tried to get as much information as I could on the surfaces. So not my favorite. Still a drawing that looks okay, but it's got its imperfections.
I would add that I like the decision you make, though, to use vertical strokes as you filled in the grays and the blue.
Oh, yeah.
And particularly in the grays. My tendency is almost always to go with cross contour shading. I've just been programmed that way. Mm-hmm. But I think it contributed to the steel effect or feeling of the can and its sort of satiny shine. There's plenty of information in the design of the can and in the curve of the letters to let us know that this is a cylinder. So Matt didn't need to use strokes in a cross contour fashion. And so, and he didn't, and it works. It worked out really well.
You know, cross contour lines can go this way and they can also go this way.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. So I still was using strokes that flowed with the form.
With just the straighter dimension of the form.
The vertical orientation.
So it contributed to the metal feeling of the can. So that was a good choice. I think that was a good choice. I actually really love I don't know. You said there's some too much white, maybe it's strung around the bulls, but I really like the top of the can.
Yeah.
And the way you use the white and the really dark values up there, that's really effective.
Yeah, I think that the gel pen's working okay up here. It's these little marks that I decided to put in there to make the letters stand out a little bit more in the bowls. The bowls actually have a little bit of white around them.
Yeah, they do.
I just would have liked to had refined that lettering a little bit more. But it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
All right, very good.
All right, the next one was yours, so...
Next one is the fire hydrant. That's right. I was really excited about this piece. I just love fire hydrants. I don't know why I'm attracted to them. Strange little forms that hang out on the side of the road like little men. And I think I did a great drawing as far as the proportions go and the ellipses. I think they look good. The bottom is more circular than the circles that are near the top. So I get a good feeling of how my eye level is changing as I look from top to bottom. It's probably because when the photographic reference was taken, the photographer was relatively close to the object. And so we can see that change in the ellipses from more round at the bottom to less round at the top. It was a challenging form just because it is symmetric and we were drawn at an angle, but it still needs to feel like it would be symmetric if we stood right in front of it. Where I thought we could definitely improve this drawing is in terms of the value contrast. I would have liked to have gotten darker. We were using pen, which is kind of a slow medium, but it was a small drawing. I think I could have gotten darker. So I would like to have increased the range of value. Where I guess up along the right side and on the right side of some of those cylindrical forms. So the hatching and the direction of the hatching, I think, is effective. That works for the types of forms. This basically it's cylinders and discs, and so that's pretty simple. The top of it is mostly a sphere, like a hemisphere. So again, very geometric. It's the type of subject that I'm attracted to anyway. So if I had a choice to do it again, I would have definitely selected the object again, but I would have chosen a different medium that allowed me to get darker faster, maybe something like charcoal. So the subject is slightly offset, but then the shadow also goes, it's offset to the right and the shadow goes to the right. So I wonder if I would have been better off compositionally to have offset. I'm of two minds. The fire hydrant looks like if it had eyes, it's looking to the left. And so that's why I wanted to crop it onto the right. But it's a little heavy on the right because of that and the shadow moving to the right. So maybe it would have been better compositionally to have the fire hydrant slightly offset to the left of the picture plane, and then the shadow add a little bit of weight to the right. So I'm on the fence about that. I'm not a big fan of a portrait offset to the left if the person was looking at the left, but it's not a person. It's just a fire hydrant. So what do you think about that, Matt? Do you think the fire hydrant should have been offset to the left?
I think I do. Yeah. And we can look at this and crop it. But first I want to talk about a couple of things. First of all, this is a great example of using directional stroking to create the illusion of form while developing the value. So you can see Ashley's lines are curving with each section based on the planes that exist in those locations. And we got vertical lines that curve, we got horizontal lines that curve. And when there's a plane change from, for example, this plane to this plane, the lines change. So he's creating contrast while having the values be very similar. So when you're dealing with a subject like this and you're working with pen and ink, you've sometimes got to create contrast other than through value. So because you're going to run into situations where you have similar values, but they're different objects, and you've got to differentiate them somehow. So changing the direction of the stroke, again, this is a good example. Strokes going this way, strokes going this way, and then the next plane, the strokes are going this way. That really adds structure to the drawing and makes it look three-dimensional and gives you the contrast that you need without making the values too incredibly different. I really like the way that works in this piece. I do think this is a great example. Somebody said this is a a very good, a great lesson for pen and ink for me, because even though this is a mundane, everyday object, it's got quite a bit of complexity to it, and you really are forced to use line in a creative way in order to create the illusion of form. I think this area right here is a little tricky because you have all these pieces coming together, but you described what's happening there without having edges, without having lines there to indicate the edges, and the lines going in the different directions are doing a really good job in describing what happens in that location.
That was the trickiest area.
Yeah, looking at it, I can tell
all those curvy planes meeting in the middle.
Right, and you're dealing with lines, so that can make it really tricky. You might be tempted to do something like this in that location, but then you get into weird spots.
Yeah.
So I like the fact that they kind of come together, but it's open right there without any marks, and you allow the viewer to fill in the rest of the information. So let's just quickly look at what would happen if we crop this a little bit different. And whenever you have something going off the edge of the picture plane or getting close to going off the edge of the picture plane, that pulls your visual attention. So a lot of times people refer to that as visual weight. So when you have, in this case, well, I've got the wrong tool here. When you've got lines going off here for the shadow, but nothing else goes off the edge of the picture plane anywhere else, that's what's creating that visual pull and weight to the right.
Yeah.
So you can counterbalance that by having elements that go off the picture plane somewhere else. Like if you had a little bit of visual information over here, like I'm just going to draw a really bad sign over here. If you had like something up there, house on fire back here in the background.
I missed an opportunity right there.
So this diagonal right here and this visual information would help that composition be stronger. You can kind of see how that works.
Yeah, I can see it now.
But if you kept it just like this, you can crop it so that you can make up for that visual weight. So let's do this. Let's crop a little off the top and a lot off the left. That might be too close. Let's try this and see if that feels a little bit better. And that definitely feels better. So by eliminating some of the negative space, we've made it more visually balanced.
More balanced.
Yeah. But another trick, like I already mentioned, is to put something that counterbalances it on the other side. All right, next was me, and we're going to have to go quickly now because we are getting in there. But I see Sonia has given us a super chat, so let's give her a cheer here.
And Sonia completed every drawing, the whole set of Gettin Sketchy this season. So,
all right, so I'm going to read that again because we were cheering during that time.
I'm sorry.
Sonia says, I completed the whole set of this here Gettin Sketchy this season. So much fun. Starry-eyed emoji. Thank you so much, Sonia. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate your comment as well. All right. So I decided to do watercolor, and I did that because of you. You guys have last season I did a watercolor and pen and ink, and when you're combining pen and ink and watercolor, the pen and ink can kind of save the watercolor painting, and the watercolor painting can kind of save the pen and ink drawing. So you don't have to put as much information in with the pen and ink or the watercolor because they kind of work together. But I decided to do watercolor by itself because so many of you enjoyed that lesson from last season and told me about it and wanted me to do more watercolor. So I took the plunge and I did the watercolor during Gettin Sketchy, which I was super nervous about. And I also did a subject that it's not my favorite subject in the world, cats. And, cats are all right. I've had cats in the past, but they're not my favorite animal. I know that you guys are gonna kill me on that. But anyway, so I did a cat here. And I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed working quickly and loosely with watercolor. Typically, I work pretty tediously with watercolor and layer the colors and sometimes overwork them. But with just 45 minutes, I had to work quickly. I spent just a few minutes drawing out the contours and then applying the watercolor. The things I really like about this painting are the contrasting colors. We've got a lot of burnt sienna. Oh, got the wrong tool again. We've got a lot of burnt sienna in areas, and that's contrasting the greens that I put in the background and the greens of the eyes. So we have somewhat of a complementary color scheme. Most of the other colors are pretty neutral. In the grays, I added a little bit of color. So we've got some cooler grays in areas and some warmer grays in areas. So it's creating a little bit more variety in the neutrals. What I don't like about this deals with the composition, and it's something we just talked about. So if you can determine what I'm about to say, then you get major art cookies for doing that. And I don't know what art cookies are, but that's what you would get.
Probably just dried chips of paint.
So yeah, probably dried chips of paint. Don't eat it, by the way. Especially the cobalt colors, or the cadmium colors, really.
Definitely don't eat that.
So I think I've given you enough time to think about it. Let's see. Nobody said anything in the comments.
No, I was watching the comments, but I know
yeah.
there's a subtle delay.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, the compositional issue, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, is the fact that this is too heavy at the bottom of the composition. And that is because the tail goes off the bottom, and that's the only place where we have anything going off the picture plane. So, in retrospect, what I would have done differently is just allow some more space at the bottom so that the tail had some space. In fact, this composition might be really a lot stronger if the cat was moved up higher on the picture plane and the tail had a lot of space underneath it. So a lot of negative space down here, and those brush strokes with the tail could really extend far off the picture plane, which I can't really illustrate here, but you can kind of imagine if we had a lot of space at the bottom and that tail extended down, that would be a way better composition. That would be a much stronger composition, a more dynamic composition, and it'd make this piece more interesting. So that's my biggest regret on this one. I also wish that I could have made those pinks a little bit stronger and made them stand out a little bit more. They seem a little light and washed out after looking at this piece. Obviously, I would like to put more detail and have some of those whiskers in there. But since I was working quickly, I didn't really preserve those areas for the whiskers. In retrospect, I wish I would have done that. That can easily be fixed with some gouache over the top. But anyway, this was definitely a piece I enjoyed doing, and I was really happy with the results.
I'm happy with your results also, and I really like the angular contour of the cat. You know, there's some pretty sharp little corners and bends in the edges of the cat and on both sides. And I just think that looks really cool, you know, because it's unexpected. Cats are so soft and they're almost like liquid animals. But this cat's got a sculptural quality to him because of those subtle, like obtuse angular changes around the edges of the cat. So I really like that. I also think that the way you worked and you mentioned this in the area of white with some different grays and some cool grays. Again, just like the whites of the eye, usually they're gray, except for where light is hitting most directly. So it's important to tone down those whites so they don't dominate your picture. And then the green in the background was for me was kind of an unexpected choice. You know, I don't know if I would have chosen that color green, but I think it looks really great up against those orangish browns. We've got kind of a secondary color relationship happening in there. So
yeah,
that was a nice color decision that you made there. The cat's eyes look good. It looks like he's looking right at us. You preserved the little. Did you put the highlights back in there, or did you save?
No, I preserved them.
Okay,
I worked around them.
That's a very, very natural. It's a pure watercolor. No addition of any other white media. Speaking of which, I know it was a drawing or two ago, but Buddy had wondered on your Red Bull can if you could even use gouache over the waxy layer of colored pencil that was there, or would it come off because wax is resistant? And I know that's about a different piece, but to answer that, yeah, you can still use gouache, and it's it doesn't soak into the paper. So if you try hard to scratch it off, you can scratch it off. But gouache is still paint; it's still glue, so you can use it over your colored pencil drawings.
All right. Let's move on to the last one. That was yours.
So this is the last one. We're doing okay on time at 7:34, so we'll go fast. And I was super happy with this one. It was black paper and pastel, pastel over black paper, there's a lot of rhythm here. You know, the repetition of marks at the bottom, there's a lot of convergence. The arms and the pipes are leading us right to the sparks, which probably don't need any help drawing attention, but yeah, Matt's drawn a couple of lines from the helmet too. Everything is converging on those sparks. And so it's really an effective use of convergence as a way to create emphasis. And of course, emphasis is one of our important principles of art. This one was not too hard to do because all of the colors are so similar. You know, it's not monochromatic, but I purposely chose an image that was close to monochromatic. So it's really dominated by neutral colors and then orange and yellow. But there are just a few pops, little pops of purple and blue around the helmet, around the collar, which keep it from feeling like a monochromatic image. So I'm super happy with this one. The shine of the helmet, like as you guys know, I'm attracted to shiny objects. Whether I pull them off effectively or not, I'm going to give them a shot. And the helmet was a little bit shinier than this. There was some brighter areas in there, but without having the reference next to the piece, you don't really notice that. I think it's pretty effective. I think it works. If you think about all the pastel on there, if we squeezed it all together, it probably only takes up about 40 or 50% of the image. So this is another good example of how I'm working on a toned surface, and it doesn't have to be black, but working on a relatively dark toned surface, kind of a midnight blue or a super dark green can work also. Those dark surfaces can do a lot of the work for you and really fill in the gaps that you leave. So if you're not working on black surfaces or dark surfaces, I would encourage you to do so with a lot of different media, not just pastel, but I like to start a painting on a dark canvas. It doesn't have to be white.
All right. Yeah, I really like this one. And it's amazing how much you can make a image look complete and feel complete when you work on a dark surface. Even a toned surface, like a gray surface, it really helps you create more of a broad range of value in a short period of time. You know, a lot of us struggle with working on a white surface with dark media, bringing those values down as dark as they need to be in order to make a drawing that looks like it's complete. In this case, when you work on a black paper, you'd think that you would have the opposite problem and you have to add all these lights, but the world around us must be pretty dark.
Yeah, it must be darker than it is light. Right. Good point, man.
Because you can really put down minimal colors and still have an image that feels very complete. This is a great testament to how much you can get done in a short period of time working in that manner. I really like the color relationships in this. I really think that the blues really pop against those oranges. They really stand out. And there's just a few areas where those blues are located. Now, I will say that if there was only one area where the blue was located, it would look out of place. But having just a few little areas, which might seem strange, but if you have it in just one area, it's going to pop out and stand out and probably command too much attention. But having it here, here, and here, it really contrasts the orange and adds just the right amount of pop of color. I like the bit of purple back there too. I like the smooth gradation that's happening up here on the helmet. I like the reflection on the front of the helmet and the gradation that happens away from that, and how the information that we see in the background is blurred out. It's enough information for us to know that this worker is in a work environment in a dark location, but not a lot of information, but just enough for us to understand this. And I like the sparks, the way you handled that with these really strong marks all going out in different directions. So a really great job on this one. I really like this piece. All right. It is time to pick.
Time to choose our favorites.
So I'm going to pick my favorite that I did and also favorite Ashley did. And Ashley's going to do the same. Who did the first drawing this season?
You did.
Okay. Well, why don't you pick first?
Okay.
All right.
So let's see. Our friends in the chat are already voting. Love seeing those come.
Yes, put your votes up there.
Well, it's challenging this season.
It's interesting what people are saying too.
Yeah, I'm always interested to see how other folks see these pieces that we draw, and sometimes they line up with our favorites, and other times they pick my least favorite. So it's just crazy. You know, what do they say? There's no disputing taste. Whatever you choose as your favorite is legit. But my favorite. For Matt, it's between the cats, right? Is it the lion or is it the domestic cat? The lion or the domestic cat? I'm really struggling. because it's but I think I'm gonna go with the lion actually.
Okay.
Even though I love domestic cats, and the cat I liked that Matt was courageous enough to tackle watercolor in such a short period of time. It's an excellent painting, but I think I'm gonna go with the lion just because of all of the high range of value. And the mark making in there is so variable, and the structure of the face seems so realistic to me. So I'm going to pick the lion. And then for my favorite drawing that I did, again, I'm a little bit torn between the bookends, the first drawing and the last drawing that I did, the man in graphite, and then the welder in pastel. Hey, maybe it's the same man. Maybe he's just a welder.
I don't think so.
You know, he's got his cap on, he went in the shop, dropped that mask, and I'm going to pick the welder. I think the welder is my favorite drawing that I did this season, and maybe just because it's my most recent. My students are aware that my favorite artwork that I've ever made is always the one that I did most recently. I've noticed I have a trend in that direction, but I think it's legit this time. Even if I had done them in different order, I think I would have probably still picked the welder, because it kind of feels like a complete artwork. Kind of feels like a finished composition. So it's going to push it over the top. How about you, Matt?
Well, it's funny. Most of the comments that I'm reading are the lion and the welder. People's favorites.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. We're in agreement this season.
Yeah. Some people are in agreement, but I haven't picked mine yet.
Yeah. That's right.
You know, going into tonight, I had picked my favorite.
Oh.
And I changed my mind.
How about that?
I did change my mind.
After our critique, Matt has changed his mind.
Right. Originally, my favorite that I did was going to be the cat with watercolor.
Okay. A strong piece.
And I think I was partial to that because it was watercolor. Mm-hmm. And I was happy with myself for getting this done in 45 minutes. With some level of me being kind of happy with it. But I have changed my mind, and my favorite is the lion.
The lion, okay.
Yeah, but I also I'm happy with all the drawings I did this season. I also like the pastel landscape. I really like that one. But the lion, I had a lot of fun with this one, and I just love the fur. All right, for yours, I originally had yours picked out as the welder.
Okay.
But I've changed my mind.
Changed your mind.
I've changed my mind. And I can't believe, Orion Nebula, you're with me. You're with me there. Your favorite.
The scissors.
Is the scissors.
How about that?
The scissors. I really like the scissors. I like the subtle primary scheme.
That you and Orion Nebula are into that one.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, the scissors. I think the welder's great. I think all your drawings are great this season. But the scissors, I think, are just feel the most complete and have the most pop. And
it's got some nice marks in there.
Yeah.
The blues area is not flat or it's not plain and boring. You know, it's got a lot of scribbling in different directions, I think.
Yeah.
All right. Well, all right. It's got a primary color scheme too. It's hard to deny that. So we all love our primary color schemes.
And it's a strong primary color scheme.
We're kids at heart.
With the subtle yellows in there, I really love it.
Very surprising.
All right. Well, that'll do it for the season 13 wrap up, season finale extravaganza. Like I said, we're going to take a few weeks off, and then we'll be back drawing and painting for you guys next season. If you have any suggestions of what you'd like to see, I'm maybe regretting this decision that I'm making right now live on air. But if you want to shoot me an email at contact@thevirtualinstructor.com, you can give me some suggestions. We haven't really talked about what we're going to do next season, if we're going to have a theme or if we're going to pick our own subjects like we did this season. I think Ashley and I both really enjoy picking our own subjects and our own medium.
Because I like to pick a subject and figure out what medium is it asking for.
That's what I like to do. You too. I don't think I'm going to use this medium. You remember that season that we did with the wheels?
The 2 wheels?
Yes.
Yeah. Boy, that was hard.
We had a season, and I don't remember what season it was, but we had 2 wheels. We would spin each wheel, and it would tell us what photo reference we were using, and then also the medium we were using.
And they just didn't match up.
Right. We had no choice in the medium or we picked the references. But you know, I picked 5. Ashley picked 5. We ended up drawing each other's
we drew each other's
references. And the mediums it really made it a real challenge. But then we had a game show.
This is going
season.
okay, but if it was in charcoal, it'd be great. You know, 'cause we were just imagining what we could have done with it if we had a little more control.
All right. Well, we really need to wrap things up because Ashley's got to get all his oil painting stuff over here ready for our next live show, which is, of course, for members. If you're not a member right now, you can join right now and you can join us for the live lesson that's going to follow. Ashley's finishing up a fantastic oil painting during tonight's lesson. I'm excited to see this one finished. So those of you who are members, we'll see you in just a minute. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like. And if you're watching the recorded version, make sure you leave a comment below. Let us know which ones of the drawings were your favorite from this season. We'd love to know that. And if you have thoughts on what you'd like to see next season, let us know as well. Again, a few weeks we're going to have off for Getting Sketchy, and then we'll be back right at you broadcasting live. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and sign out for this evening. Thanks again for watching. Good night, everybody.